All right, everyone, I wanted to do a little overview of the Banshee. This is one of my knife designs, and it is basically a lightweight tactical knife. The idea behind this knife was to build something that is light and strong. So those are two elements that are kind of at play here. I wanted to balance strength and weight because there are tons of locking mechanisms out there right now that are very, very strong, but they're also really heavy. Backlocks, the triad lock from Cold Steel, is objectively probably the strongest mechanism out on the market right now, but it's also a boat anchor, and pretty much every knife that uses the triad lock is very, very heavy, or some form of backlock. They're all, remarkably strong, but this was my solution for getting down into the sort of 3.8 ounce range. So this knife, as you see it here, this is a full 4-inch knife, and it's thick stock too. I mean, if you look at the blade here, this is 0.1875 inches, 3/16 of CPM 20 CV. It's great steel, and this is 3.8 ounces as you see it. Now, how am I able to do that? Well, for one, the frame on this is machined out of composites. Now, I do these in titanium, and I'll show you one in titanium in just a minute, but these composites, I can use G10 carbon fiber. This is a material called Texalium, comes from a company called Hexcel out in California. It's kind of like an upgraded carbon fiber, if you will. And it comes in nice colors too. This is silver twill inlaid into blue twill, and this actually has a layering with resin, and it's actually really cool. It glows in the dark. This glows blue on the blue portions and white on the silver portions. So it's pretty neat stuff, and it's really strong. This is what SpaceX uses for the fuselages on their rockets. That BFR rocket, that's actually made almost entirely out of Hexcel Texalium. It's really remarkable stuff. Part of the reason why rockets are so expensive. This is very expensive material too, by the way. I should mention the way that it's made is actually with fiberglass wires, which are then coated in aluminum, and that aluminum is I believe it's actually a 7000 series aluminum, and then it's woven into a twill pattern, as you can see, and then layered, and that gives you this effect that you see here. Now, this is 3D machined, and then of course I hand polish and fit everything. If I go over here into the light, you'll see in the back, this is a clamshell design, which is pretty unique in the world of custom knives. You can see there is a seam, but it's really hard to see. Over the length of the knife, it's very, very precise, very well fit. This is not your typical custom knife because, again, clamshell construction is very, very rare in the world of custom knives. You don't see it a lot because it requires incredibly tight tolerances. I measure out to the 10th thousandth when I do my knives. So, we're talking about incredibly high precision machining, aerospace grade type stuff. This has a jeweled titanium pocket clip that has a ball bearing style detent on it to actually give it retention. Technique I borrowed from Todd Begg. I asked him, like, hey Todd, can I borrow that? And he said, okay. So, out of respect for Todd, I wanted to make sure that I asked the maker beforehand. This one also has a crown spine on it with a kind of a Persian style blade, which is really, really cool. And you can see freehand ground, but very clean grinds, hollow ground. I do mine on a 6-inch contact wheel, which is going to give you a really dramatic hollow grind, and that's a machine satin on there, so just freehand. Of course, I've been grinding for a number of years, so it kind of helps. And of course, the spindle lock. Now, this is my own proprietary locking system. It's based on the axis lock, kind of like the triad lock is based on a back lock, but it has some key differences. One of the big differences is the environmental seal. You'll notice there are little pins which go from the springs to the spindle. Those pins are basically going to connect the springs and keep dirt and debris out of it, so that if you do get this thing clogged up with mud or dirt or snow, you would have something to keep all that crap out of your springs. Now, the springs are also changed. On an axis lock, they're made out of, they're called omega springs. Omega springs are basically a round spring, and they rely on compression over the length of the spring, and it's okay, but there's not really a lot of surface area there to kind of give it the ability to compress. So what I did was I used compression springs. They are coils, and they basically are running inside the frame, and there's a little titanium plate on the inside of there, which I'll show you in just a second, that's going to hold everything in place. But basically you have coil springs, dual nested coil springs on either side, and that's going to give it the spring action to get it to return forward. Now, those are much, much more durable than Omega springs. Omega springs are okay. Benchmade gives them, there's a rating for the axis lock of 10,000 cycles, which sounds like a lot until you realize that if you flip your knife open and closed every day for 1 hour, 1 second every time, like this, you would only get, on average, 180 days before you had a breakage. On mine, a little different. These are rated for 10 million cycles, which translates into, again, if you did the same thing, opening it, closing it, 38 years. So that's why you pay a little bit more. So there's that. Okay, so there you got the coil springs, you've got the environmental seal. Well, what's going on with the spindle itself? Well, on a Benchmade axis lock, the Omega springs are connected physically to the locking bar as it moves forward and back. On these, it's not. There's actually no physical connection between the guide rods, as I call them, or the pushers, or whatever you want to call them, and the spindle. And so what happens is, yeah, it forces you to use both your thumb and your index finger to manipulate it when you want to close it. It's a safety precaution. The other thing, though, is it enables it to be taken down quickly. Axis locks, if you've ever taken one apart, are an absolute nightmare to disassemble and reassemble. If you ever get a bunch of crap or something stuck down in an axis lock, which, by the way, axis locks are not environmentally sealed, so cleaning them is a total bear. If you ever have to take one apart, especially if you have to replace one of those famous Omega springs, it takes a long time. 20, 30 minutes, honestly. You know, even for somebody who's practiced with knives as I am, I find it to be difficult and onerous. So when I designed this locking system, I removed that physical connection. So this basically floats. And what that means is that you can actually just take one side of this. So one's Loctited in, the other one's not. And I can just unscrew the little thumb stud here that I use for the spindle and remove it, pop it right out, and everything in there, the springs, the guide rods, everything comes out without any tools. You just need the one tool, a T15 Torx driver, to unscrew the end stud there on the top of the spindle lock, and then it comes right out. You can replace any component without taking the knife apart, which is awesome. That means that this this knife is far more serviceable than an axis lock. So what you have is it's more durable, it is more serviceable, and you have a situation where, in my opinion, this is less prone to jamming. It's a better system, I mean, just period. And that's why I actually got a patent pending on this system. All the aspects of what makes this locking system unique are actually under patent pending right now. So it's something that I will eventually seek to license out to other makers and manufacturers, just as some intellectual property. But you know, that's one of the reasons why you might pay a little bit more for a custom knife like this. You know, this is a unique locking mechanism. Apart from that, this is a ridiculously strong lock. I've put over 400 pounds on my lock and it hasn't broken. I stopped the testing because it sheared the thumb studs off. You know, this is a very, very, very strong knife, and you're probably not going to break it. The other thing is, of course, this being custom, if you do break it, I do have a lifetime warranty on my work. So it's one of those things. You expect good customer service, and you know, I have good customer service. But everything on it, you know, you're expecting perfect blade centering, which it is, a very fast, smooth action, which it is. It will close under its own weight. You can flip it open and close it just like an axis lock. You can actually use your, well, if I was freezing out here, you could probably use your middle finger if you want to open it like a weirdo. You can definitely do that. But, you know, this is a very smooth, very functional, very operational knife, and it weighs 3.8 ounces. So, like, Demko out there has probably got stronger knives with his triad locks, but they're not this light. Mine are half the weight of Demko, and they are probably 90% as strong. So, you know, we're talking about an extremely good strength for weight ratio, great blade for length ratio. You know, this is a 4-inch blade. There are not a lot of 4-inch knives out there that you're going to get for this kind of weight. And then also think about the material strength, right? The thickness of this blade is 50% thicker than a Sebenza, but yet it weighs 0.1 ounces less than a Sebenza. So this is a really remarkable knife in terms of what it can do on paper. And in practice, they've been great. I've sold a couple dozen of these so far, and so far feedback has been absolutely magnificent on them. I've sent a few out to a few reviewers. Everybody seems to love them. You know, I've had great success with this knife, and I'm just super excited about the model. I did mention I have a titanium version. Let me show you the titanium version, because this has a little more specialness to it. Unlike the other one I just showed you, this is not really meant to be lightweight. This is not really a you know, daily carry type knife. This is more of a crown jewel collection grail type thing. This is a titanium frame machined out of 6AL4V. Now it is billet 6AL4V titanium. Has a taper on it, 3D machined, all these angles, and despite what you might believe, it is much, much harder to hand finish a straight angle like that than it is to do a, you know, like a contour or something along those lines. Contours are generally easier because they're less demanding in terms of how you do your actual polishing or finishing. So this is a very difficult thing to do. And you'll notice that every part and component on this is made out of 6AL4V titanium, except for that blade. So the frame's 6AL4V, the spindles are 6AL4V. It's got a 6AL4V titanium pivot collar and pivot. Thumb studs are titanium. You've got a titanium pocket clip, titanium screws, the whole thing. And it's running on ceramic bearings. There is actually, I lied, there is one other thing that's not made out of titanium apart from the blade in this knife, and that is the molychrome races that are up on the inside of this. This actually has hardened steel made out of molychrome steel races. And apologize, man, I tell you what, it closes fast. You can hear it sounds like an M1 Garand or something like that. You know, you close this thing, it's got a ping to it. And that musical harmony of parts, they're working together in such tight concert that this is literally, it feels like one piece of solid titanium. It's really, really nice in the hand. Of course, I make these with a bunch of different blade shapes. This one's a Wharncliffe. I'm showing you this in the sort of semi-harsh evening sun. You can see all the smudges and fingerprints, but it's quite a beautiful finish, if I do say so myself. Again, machine satin on this. This is not a high-end finish. This is my standard. You know, I like to try and put as good of a finish as I can on my knives. I think this will meet or exceed, if not freaking blow away, pretty much anything from any of the major knife makers, Hinderer, Strider, Emerson, etc. You look at their satin finishes, and well, I don't know. You do the comparison. Go out and take a look at one of their knives, and then take a look at mine and see which one's got the nicer satin finish. Yeah, I'm willing to take that bet. So anyway, that's the Banshee. Comes in a bunch of different varieties. These are custom made, and you know, I make them one at a time. Sole authorship knife maker. You know, this is kind of my gig, and love to earn your business. This is a very complex mechanism for a custom knife. You know, I think the Hawks have kind of the patent on, or the market, I guess, on complex custom knives cornered, and so I figured I'd have to get into that market. That sounds like a lot of fun. But no, these have been great, and I really have been super enthusiastic about you know, how these have come out. My customers just seem to love them. Everybody who gets them in the hand, you know, they feel great. They feel the hand. They feel really fantastic in terms of the overall ergonomics. You can see there it is in the sort of traditional hold there. But if you have to do a chisel hold, now, not that you would do that with a Wharncliffe, but you can see it's got a little shelf here for your thumb. The way it contours around your finger, puts your finger right there. You got a nice finger trail, and the way this handle is designed sets your hand back a little bit further. It's a little bit like Alan Lishovitz knives in that respect. It's really a comfortable handle, and so you get this really nice locking system too, which is incredibly strong. I'd wager to bet it's stronger than probably 95% of the other knives out there. Like I said, apart from the triad lock, I really don't see a lot of frame locks or liner locks being as strong as this. It is a remarkably strong thing. By the way, I should mention that the actual spindle and the spindle lock itself is made out of solid core 440C that's hardened. So you're actually compressing on a solid piece there. you know, the titanium screws, it's actually bored and threaded on either side with a solid core left, so that all the load-bearing components are 100% solid, hardened steel. So it's also made out of 440C, so it will never gall, which is one of the things that you have to look out for. Sometimes if you have you know, titanium, if you use titanium for this, you would actually experience some galling there. So this is one of the things that I think is a really, really important thing to do. Anyway, that's the Banshee. I think it's a great knife. See you guys later. Bye.